Michelle Thomas. My son that I lost is Carl Cephas. He was my third child. I have 4 children. My second son, he was the baby boy. He was the life of the party. He was somewhat like me when it comes to that, you know. Full of life, full of joy. Awesome ball player. Graduate of Southwood Tolland High School. Played basketball out there. He played basketball around in the surrounding schools when he went here. He grew up playing on the 5A football, Hawkeyes, Southside. He was just a great kid, you know, when it came to growing up. He was a loving individual. His family meant the world to him. He was, he just, I mean, you know, it was nothing better than his family. Was he a mommy's boy? Most definitely. He was, I knew from carrying him, he would be that one that clung. He clung to me. He often referred to me as his queen. I was always his queen. Mommy, you're my queen. You're the strongest woman I ever seen in my life. You're the strongest woman I ever met in my life. And I would say to him all the time, really? You think? He said, Mommy, you really are. But he was only a big brother of one, and he was definitely the baby brother to his 2 older siblings. Definitely the baby. His dad and I, from our marriage, he was his first grandchild on that side. The first great grandchild. He was the first. And so the first nephew, you know, he was the first. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I work for the Eastern States, and I've been there for 20 years this year. During Big E time is a real technical time on my job. And raising my kids working there, they always knew, don't bother Mommy during Big E time, okay? A lot of things that were said on that day that you said constantly all the time, never did I know that it would happen. And the one thing he said to me, he called me. He was trying to get his cable set up at the girl that he was seeing had gotten cable and it had messed up. And she told him, no, all we got to do is da-da-da-da. And he said, I'm calling my mother. Because he called me for everything. If I didn't say it was right, it wasn't right. He would find a reason that it's not right, even though it worked. But what he said to me on my way to work, I was actually getting ready to get on the bus, and he said, Mommy, you sound sick. I said, baby, I don't know. I came down with a cold or something. I don't know what is wrong with me. He said, why are you going to work? And I said, excuse me? And he fell out laughing. He said, it's Big E time. And we both laughed about it. When I got to work, I was working that night 1 to 10. I was working the desk 1 to 10. And I got to work, and it was about, I stayed until about 3 or 4. And I got so sick, they had to send me home. And I swear, I couldn't understand. But when I got home, I called him. And I said, you jinxed me. And he said, why, Mommy, what's wrong? And he said, you still sound bad. And I said, well, I had to get sent home. And he started cracking up laughing. But he said to me at that point, and that was like around maybe 5-ish. Mommy, do you need anything? And I said, no, I'll be fine. I just want to lay down. And I did little things around the house and did, you know, what we do. And I ended up laying down. And he kept calling me. and kept calling, Mommy, you sure you okay? You need some soup? You want me to bring you ginger ale? Mommy, I'm around, so if you need me, just call me. Mommy, you better call me. Mommy, you know I love you. Mommy, I love you. Mommy, queen, beautiful queen. And I kept saying, baby, I want to go to sleep. Let me go to sleep. And he kept saying, you know you my queen, right? You know you my queen, Mommy. Mommy, I love you. Mommy, you know what? You the strongest woman. I swear to God. Look at you. Sick as you are, you was going to work and you went to work. And we kind of laughed about it. Few more phone calls. Every phone call he ended with, Mommy, I love you. You know you my beautiful queen. You the strongest woman. Every phone call. That last phone call, we got into a conversation about something and we were laughing and I said, yeah, baby, I said, live by the sword, die by the sword. He had just had his first daughter, which was his last child and his only daughter. It was a big thing because I used to tell him all the time, God's not going to give you a girl. And he said, why? Because that's all he wanted. I want a daughter. I want a daughter. And I said, God ain't going to give you a girl because you got to know how to treat them. And he would laugh and laugh. He kept saying to me, ever since my daughter's been born, Mommy, I ain't thinking about no streets. And he had since started working, and he was so proud of his job. And, you know, we'd all laugh at it, but he was so proud of his job, and I was definitely proud of him. And it was at the Goodwill in Westfield. And when I tell you this kid loved his job, and it was like, really? You do? But he loved it. He loved it. He loved, doing putting the stuff together and putting it out on the floor and saying how much it should be. And that last phone call, he ended with, Mommy, now I'm around, so call me if you need anything. And at that point, I felt so weak. I don't know why. But I started feeling so weak, and I said, baby, I really need to go to sleep. And he said, I love you, Mommy. And I said, I love you too, baby. And I dozed off. I remember my daughter coming in the room, and she was going to her friend's house, and she said, Mommy, check your phone. For the past 5 minutes, your phone has been ringing off of the hook. And she said, Mommy, it is so freaking hot up in here, and you're asking for a blanket, and you're asking for cover. You got fever in you that's so bad until you're heating up the room. She has some soup and ginger ale, and she gave it to me. And just at that point, she was walking out the door. She was going around the corner to her friend's house, and she said, I'll be at my friend's. If you need anything, Mommy, call me. But find out who calling you like that. And just as she said that and walked out the door, the call came again. And it was my niece. And she said, Auntie, me and my mom been trying to reach you. Carl's been shot. And my mom said, he doesn't appear to be breathing. And I'm on my way from work over there. He was on Norfolk Street at her mother's house. And we left. I lived on Berkshire at that time. I caught my daughter going out, and it was just like unbelievable. We made it halfway there. And when I got halfway, it was something that went over me. And I felt like it was God. And he was saying to me, he's okay. But the whole time we was en route to the scene, I didn't feel that. I felt my son still had some breath. And it wasn't until we made it that I felt that it was like a gush of wind. The feeling was like a gush of wind that went through my heart. And I knew at that point my son was gone. And that was that open piece of my heart. So when I got there, it was all roped off already. Needless to say, I got there within 20 minutes of my son being shot and killed. I couldn't get down the street. It was so many people that were already there. Literally, it was over 100 people that had gotten there before I did, and my daughter, and my other daughter, and my grandchildren. I'm calling on the way, me and my daughter. Now, mind you, I say, people, please keep stuff off of Facebook until the family comes forth. Because as we're driving, I remember my daughter having her phone in her hand and driving. And she literally starts screaming at the top of her lungs. I didn't know at that time what she had seen. But months later, she said, I saw my brother. They had my brother on Facebook dead on the ground. And they killed my daughter. They wouldn't let me go near him. And we sat there for about 3 hours before the coroner got there. And I watched my baby on that ground all that time, just laying there. They wouldn't let me touch him. They wouldn't let me go near him. I was even told, me and one of my daughters were told, if we tried to get through again, they would arrest us. Very bad experience with the police at that time. As a mother, I was treated unfairly. I felt like no one told me. Nevertheless, they never even told me my son was dead. They never told me that. I kept yelling, why aren't you working on him? Why aren't you doing anything? We can't touch him. And my father-in-law finally said, baby, he's gone. Blocked him off with a car because my father-in-law requested so that I couldn't see him. And that was it. There was someone with my son when he was murdered. He came to me and told me what my son's last words, because I begged him to tell me, what did my son say? Did he say anything? And he told me what happened. And he also told me, he looked up and said, help me. And then he started. He called Mommy. Oh God. And then he said that was it. And so the Mommy, because he always knew Mommy would never leave him. Mommy would always protect him. But he knew at that point God was calling him, and he went with God. So that was the comfort in me, is to know that he accepted. He accepted that. He accepted God. He accepted Christ in his life. And he called on him. And I'm okay. I'm okay with that part. I'm okay with the part that God didn't let him suffer, I thank God every day my son died on the spot. He didn't have to go to the hospital. He didn't have to be in pain. He didn't have to, we didn't have to be in days and months and weeks of pain of knowing what tomorrow is going to be. It all happened. And I just don't understand that we're going into 5 years and the individual that murdered my son is still walking the street. They know who did it. I just don't understand. And it bothers me because I don't understand how this individual got away. The police department gives us nothing. I heard from someone in the street, a cop said, oh, they chased the car and lost him on Island Pond Road, going around the curve. Okay, and this person said this, not realizing that he's talking to somebody that literally knows about this murder and is very close to this. They're at work. He was at work, okay, and just got into a conversation about the city, and my son's murder had just happened, so he brought that name up, and he said, yeah, my understanding is they chased that car, but they lost it because they were going so fast, they almost flipped over. I said, did they get a license plate number? Did they get a description of what they were chasing? But no one can tell me. No one even knows about the cops chasing a car, is what the police department is saying. But you have an officer that said this. It was just brought back to me. And I was like, oh, wow. That kind of gave me some, comfort. But it also gave me like, okay, so now I got questions after this, okay? Because cops are supposed to be trained that when did you get like a letter in the license plate, a number, something? I just want you to say it was a 9 and an R in the license plate. That's all. I just want you to say it was a white car. I just need that. We need that. There's a whole bunch of, same color cars. So I can't pinpoint it. But I just need answers. I need answers. I was told my son was shot twice in the back. One went through the back of his head. And came out his left eye. And one went in his back and came out his stomach. It went through him, so the bullet never lodged inside of him. And my son fought. He fought him while he was shot and dying. They said my son turned around and hit him and knocked him out. But this individual still got up and was able to get in his car by himself and leave. I kept hearing the name of the individual that had supposedly shot and killed my son. I did not know what that meant. I didn't know for days. Why this name? Because it wasn't a name. It was, their street names. And I didn't realize it. And then I was told that's who, but to this day, and September 27th will be 5 years. And to this day, the police department has one name, and he's still walking the street. They want me to be okay with that. I was going to the police department every day. I've slowed down a little. I was told at the police department, this is how much respect that we get from our police. Ma'am, if you come back down here again asking those questions, we're going to arrest you. I said, on what grounds? And she said, harassing the police department. I said, really? I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm on my way to work. Every day I come down here, I'm on my way to work. So I'm here at the same time every day. She said, I know. I said, okay, so have your handcuffs on the table on your desk tomorrow, because I'll be down here. I went back the next day. And the woman looked at me and said, Miss Thomas, I know that ain't you standing there. And I said, officer, it really is. I said, do you have children? And she said, I do. I said, are they alive? She said, they are. My point exactly. Okay? I'm down here because I lost a son. Okay? And she said, enough said. I'm sorry, we don't have any more information. You come when you want. Yep, because you know I already went to your head. Okay, you already got that. I fought the wrong way for years because I fought for him. And my pastor said to me one day, you got to leave it on the altar. You got to let God handle it. And I did. And then I turned that fight around. So when I saw him going in a direction, I had help from an AAU coach that lived in Southwick that said, let me take a white guy, white family, okay? Got him into the school. And we would send him on the bus. Mecco had a bus. I paid $1 every day. And he took the bus. And he was such a clown, okay? Their bus was the old station wagons, the long ones. They had the school bus thing on top. And they had to drop a kid off somewhere up by Adams Park. So that's where he grew up over there. You know, everybody knew him. And every time my oldest son would say, Mom, could you tell him to stop doing that? He'd yell out the window, yo! And everybody start clowning, yo, be to go your brother. And and they would laugh. But that's how he was. He didn't care. He was getting a ride. He was coming from school, That's how he felt. You could say to him, Carl, people don't ride on mini buses, and but why? It's warm, This is the type of stuff that he would literally come up with, So that was him. That was just him. So I got him out there, and he took that team to a championship. They had an awesome team, but they were so afraid of playing our boys. And so when that day came, and they had to play against Sabas and SciTech and all of those schools, Carl got all the flack. This is where you are, because nobody knew, And one of the games was their big game. And Carl's boys were just playing really bad because they were scared. We have a tendency, to, put some fear in you. So that's what they were doing. And they said at halftime, because I said to him, what you do, go back there and beat them up or something? He said, Mom went back there and went in. He said he told them, we ball players. Those are my friends, and they're going to still be my friends. This is the game. This is how we do it. He said he went off on them so bad. They lost that game, okay? They came back at halftime, 35. They were losing by 35 points. They lost by one. They lost by one. So it was the impact Carl had on his teammates, and the love that he had for sports. He loved it so much. We didn't tell him they didn't have a football team. I thought he was going to kill me and his father when he found out. So the little boy calls and says, "Yo, Mom, okay, they don't have a football team. I think you and Dad knew that. So I'm going to play hockey." Like, Carl, just sit down. You don't have to play a sport. You know, like, you done played baseball because they didn't have nothing. You done play. And this is what he would do. But hockey? Dude, you don't know how to skate. Papa sent me for skating lessons, he said. That's his grandfather, Cephas. It's his grandfather, Cephas Jackson. And he think he can do everything. He thought he can do everything. Papa sent me. And you know what? His Pop-Pop would have sent him. if we had to let him, his Pop-Pop would have sent him. But, you know, it was just so hilarious. Like, did this dude just call here talking about hockey? Boy, we can't even pay $1 for you to go to school every day. How we gonna pay for some hockey equipment? You know, he was the joy of everyone, his nieces, his nephews. Oh my God, they are so troubled because he was so close to them. He was like a brother. You know, of course, my oldest daughter, she thought she was his mother. You know, so we are a very close family, and so they were raised, and so his nieces and his oldest nephews and his oldest nieces, they are still fighting this a lot. Of course, my oldest grandson, he was in college at that time, his second year at college, and Carl was so proud of his nephew being in college on a basketball scholarship. I'm sorry, a football scholarship, and then seeing his next nephew, his brother's, that was his sister's son, now his oldest brother's son is at the same college on a scholarship for basketball. Oh my God, you would have thought at the games he was playing, you know, football. You would have really thought that because, oh my God, he thought he was the coach, and, you know, but he was so proud. He was so proud to be able to see it. He has 4 children, 3 boys and 1 daughter, and she was only 8 weeks when he was born. And I thank her mother, because this little girl looks at a picture of her father and she can call who he is. And my daddy, it's like, how you know? You know, he is inside of you, because, you know, you do some crazy stuff. So we ain't gonna say he ain't inside of you. But her mother does not, you know, not show her, talk about her dad, and she's just going on 5. She'll be 5 in August. But this little girl she know just as much as her brothers. And she's the baby, you know. His oldest son is Carl III. So his dad was Big Carl, he was Little Carl, and his son is Baby Carl. So, of course, when I lost my husband 3 years before I lost my son of a massive heart attack. He died in my arms. And so Carl said to me, Little Carl said, so Mommy, you can stop calling me Little Carl now, because Daddy's not here. I said, no, you still Little Carl. So when he passed, his son said, Grandma, so I don't have to be Baby Carl no more? I could just be Carl, right? Because there ain't no more Carls. So I said, no, you still baby Carl. But he hates it. He'll be 14. So, it's like, oh, yes, come talk on me, baby Carl. And he's down south. So, he's so happy to see us when we go. And, but he can't stand when he see me and I say, baby Carl. And he'd be like, oh, God. I be trying to catch myself, though. I do. I really do. I'm going to fight this to the end. And I really think that we need to reach. Boys, stop playing. Okay? You always playing. You didn't have to do this. I mean, you could have picked another joke. But, what would I say? Honestly, that's honestly probably what I would have said to him. Like, yo, dude, I mean, deaf? Could you had a just like said, Mom, I'm just going to go missing for a week? But, wow, I love him. I would say to him how much I love him. I would let him know, how proud of him that I was. How proud of his children I am. And just how proud I am as a mother that God gave him to me for 30 years as my son. And it is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.